Welcome to Higher Ground, and I'm your host, Carolyn Boyd. And what an exciting show we have today. On the dawn of Father's Day, we'd like to begin first by saying and giving a big happy Father's shout out to all the fathers, the grandfathers, the uncles, big brothers, whomever served in your life as your father. What does fatherhood mean in our time today? What does it mean to be a father? All across America, families and communities and the nation, mothers and children's, faith leaders and family child advocates, to policymakers, to sociologists are all crying for fathers to be present in the lives of their children and our communities. Research done by the National Fatherhood Initiative offers some startling facts related to the attitudes, the perceptions, and behaviors that we have in our country today about fatherhood. And so our conversation today is about fatherhood, and we'd like you towards a little bit later towards the bottom of our show, we want you to have the opportunity to call in and pay tribute to your father, whomever served as that father figure for you in your life, to give a big shout out and a big honoring and celebration of the role that they play in their lives. And so I want you to jot down the call-in number now. It's 310-928-7733. Again, 310-928-7733. And if you're joining us by Skype, you may reach us at inner_light_radio. Again, that's inner_light_radio. And if you'd like to send us an email, we'd love to hear from you at innerlightradio@yahoo.com. We have a wonderful guest with us today. But first, I want to share with you some facts, as I was mentioning a little while ago, from some research at the National Fatherhood Initiative. And it says, according to the 2011 U.S. Census Bureau data, over 20 million children live apart from their biological father. That is 1 out of every 3, or 33% of children in America. Nearly 2 in 3, or 64% of African American children live in father-absent homes. 1 in 3, or 34% Hispanic children. 1 in 4, or 25% white children live in father-absent homes. And these numbers have increased significantly from 1966, where at that time only 11% of children lived in father-absent homes. So we have a tremendous opportunity and challenge presented here. And the research continues to say children who live absent their biological fathers are, on average, at least 2 to 3 times more likely to be poor, to use drugs, to experience educational or health, emotional and behavioral problems, more likely to be victims of child abuse, more likely to engage in criminal behavior, therefore feeding that school to prison pipeline we've talked so much about, and behavior that they're more likely to exhibit these kinds of behaviors than children who live with their married or biological or even adoptive parents. So we have a conversation today. While we will be honoring our fathers, we will also look a little bit more deeply, I think, in some things and hopefully strategies and ways that a real father has overcome many of the challenges that are presented in our society. So on our show, What Does Fatherhood Mean Today? We're going to look at the joys, the sorrows, and the challenges facing fathers and mothers and families today. And my very special guest, who himself is a father of 4 children and a grandfather to 3 children. And my goodness, I don't know how my guest finds the time to be such an accomplished father, as well as an activist, as well as an entrepreneur, as well as a civic, community, and business leader. He is just a tremendous asset. And we're very privileged to have joining us by phone my very special guest today.
Wekesa Madzimoyo.
And he is a wonderful public speaker, educator, facilitator, consultant, storyteller, photographer, and he holds his roots from New York City and Fayetteville, North Carolina. And it is a joy, Wekesa, to have you with us today. And how are you?
I'm doing great, Reverend Boyd. So glad to be on your show.
Oh, it is our privilege and our pleasure. And we already have got calls coming in now to pay tributes to their fathers. So I'm going to ask them if they would hold on just a little bit, because
Sure.
I would really like to have a conversation with you. You have done such marvelous things with your own family while building an educational institute that puts some very important principles at the core of your philosophy towards educating principally African or African American children. But first, we're interested in your experience as a father. And I understand that you have 4 children.
I do have 4 children, yes.
And what are their ages and their sexes?
I have 2 sons, 36 and 30, and that's by one relationship, a wonderful woman. And then I remarried and had Afia, who's my current wife, and I have 2 daughters, and there are 21 and 24 ages. Serafina, my oldest girl, Ife, my youngest daughter and youngest child. There's Chinua. He likes Chinua versus Chinua, the name, of course, hailing from Nigeria, who's my oldest son, and then Allende, who is the youngest son. Those are my children.
Oh, my goodness. So you have definitely a span of experience and time to really offer some, I hope, hopeful and insightful perspectives on fatherhood today. And I want to just know, when you had your first child way back then, were you prepared to be a father? Or
Yes,
did it
I
just
was.
you were prepared?
Yes, I was prepared to be a father. No, very much so. Part of what prepared me to be a father is 2 things. First, I had a father who was a real father to me, though he was 500 miles apart some of the time. When you read my bio, I hail from New York and Fayetteville. I was born in Fayetteville, North Carolina. My mother and father separated when I was 5, and she was living in New York City. And I would live, and he stayed in North Carolina. I would live a year with her, a year with him, a year with her, a year with him, half year with her, half year with him. And so I wasn't always with my biological father, but I was never apart from my biological father. I really want to repeat that, okay? While he was not always physically there because they were separated, I was always with him spiritually and emotionally, and he was always with me. And this is very critical because the issues between my mother and they took care of. I was not asked to fight her fight and to be against my father. Okay,
Interesting.
She did not want me to take up her issues that she had with my father. In fact, I had to ask her, because she would talk glowingly about him, and I remember being about 5 or 6. It's like, well, if he was all that, why aren't you with him? Now, this is something that I also teach. It's a very important piece to do, that is to not have the child be in the middle of a struggle between parents. And so because she pointed out to me those things that she appreciated and loved and respected about my father, even though there were other things that she did not, okay, then I remained close to him, and I did not have to try to go to war with him or choose between my mother or my father. And that same thing happened when I was in North Carolina with him. This is key, because part of what the statistics show, we have to figure out ways around them, because this society facilitates that black fathers are going to be absent by the discrepancy in police brutality, the discrepancy in arrest, the discrepancy in sentencing, the income disparity, the snatching wealth from our communities. Because of those things, we are not going to have, and never have had, a idyllic everybody with two parents and a picket fence and all of that. Still, we can and have learned how to raise solid boys and children despite that. And now so one of the things is that I told you, it's really important that the couple don't ask the children to do their fighting for them or in their place, and instead identify what they appreciate about the partner, and later on begin to tell the child why they're separate. And this is a both and statement, not an either or statement. Okay, that's critical. And I'll stop there, and then you can ask me questions as I go.
I absolutely, you can go. I mean, you hit it right on the nail right off the bat, in that how we interact with our children and the various ways that we are families today does present unhealthy interactions that then bleed over into the relationships the child have with the parents. And so I appreciate your very high caution around being very clear to recognize those wonderful attributes that father and mother bring, and then not be held hostage by either of them and having to choose who's the best parent and where you want to stay. So I really thank you for that, because, I also counsel, and I am often confronted with, those kinds of scenarios where the poor child who wants to be so desperately loved and valued and appreciated and have access to both parents are in the middle of the struggle. So thank you for that. And I do want to ask you a little bit more about that, because oftentimes the children are, unfortunately, as we've said, at the butt of that. What specific strategies have you learned that really facilitate? You sound like a very evolved, conscious being. You sound, you know what I mean? you sound like you work through, all the self-actualization stuff and, all of that stuff. Okay. But quite frankly, Wekesa, there's some of us who we're not there yet. And we need some real tools and some real strategies to help us be good fathers and help us to demonstrate good father attributes. And so for our callers and our listeners, what one or two strategies might you offer from your own personal experience? And I might just say, if my callers could please hold on, we will get to your tribute, and you will also have the opportunity to engage with our very fine guest today. So, Wekesa, what strategies would you offer? What are the one or two things that you found work best for you?
In order for us to be a great fathers, it really is simple. And the reason that this comes off is because I teach this, as well. And I work with individuals and couples and businesses, and organizations, and our community. And I work primarily with our community. I work with our community first and other communities after that. That's by design. I pay the cost for that, and I'm really happy about that. And so white society, or the dominant society, does not ask anything or expect anything positive of black men. And unfortunately, now our community doesn't. Now, this is different, and this is one of the things that I benefit from. It just happened to be part of my birth, just happened to be born at the time when our community asked me and other black men and women to take up the mission of challenging oppression and defeating it, actually, and moving our community forward. My wife, Afia, often says that she thought Martin Luther King was talking to her personally as she began the process of integrating a school. She now knows that wasn't all it was cracked up to be. At the same time, there was a sense of mission. Right? This is so important in terms of fatherhood, that we have a sense of a mission, something to do, because we derive our worth from the quality of our mission. If the most you want me to do is to not get in trouble, is to go to school so I can get a good job, so I can get on this treadmill, then you're not going to get much from me in the way of fatherhood. The only thing I can do is jump on and become a rat that runs faster on the treadmill than someone else. And you will not get qualities of good fatherhood. And getting on this treadmill, see, this country does not promote good fatherhood, period, on any group. It promotes the idea of good fatherhood, but it does not promote good fatherhood. Right? You cannot have the kind of domination, the kind of sexism, the kind of misogyny, and have that be rewarded. I'm talking about among dominant society now, and
Right.
really promote fatherhood. So it preaches good fatherhood. It does not promote it. But specifically, I wanted to go to something that we can do as a community, because we can, in our individual family circles, when we go to our family reunions, we can say, here is the mission for the men of this family. We can look around and say, we have this problem, whether it's a social problem, whether it's jail, whether it's early pregnancy without support, whether it's education or lack thereof, whether it's jail or any of those things, and can say at the level of our families, oh no, we want to change that. We, the men of the Tucker family, of the Madzimoyo family, of the Boyd family, this can be expected. And the women, especially the older women, says, y'all, this is the job of the family. I don't mean that. I'm just saying men and women need to make those family goals together. And that becomes the expectation. Now, often you'll have that around going to school and completing it. But completing school is not nearly enough. Okay,
Absolutely.
Particularly because school has been hijacked and directs us into serving the dominant culture and being alien from ours. And so it's important that we can, around our family table, say this is what the men do in our circles, men's circles, women to men, family circles. We can begin to say our mission is to restore our people to our traditional greatness. Don't tell me about how far we are from the goal. Don't tell me what the odds are that we're going to get there or die trying. And then the community and the family, starting with the family or the particular group, must reward men as they stand to achieve that, either one of those. Reward them if we achieve it. Reward them if and when we die trying. That needs to be lauded. That needs to be lifted up. Where are is the family lore about the person in the family, who stood up? And there are three things that
you are on a roll.
I'll stop.
You are on a roll, but I want you to give us those three things, all right? In just a second, I want to hear from our callers, okay? Because it is clear that you know exactly what you're talking about. And the thing that I'm most impressed about, quite frankly, anybody can teach this stuff on some level, but you can't teach it at the level you're teaching it without having walked and lived and imbibed these principles and these tenets and these values that you are highly advocating that our communities in many cases return to, but in other cases begin to understand and implement in ways that make sense for our community structuring today. So my tremendous respect for you, because you are in fact living and teaching and modeling. Unfortunately, we have so many people masquerading as experts, and you understand what I'm saying? Masquerading.
Absolutely. I agree with you totally.
Because we go and we study this stuff in these wonderful schools, and then we get our degrees, and then we come back and then we tell the women and the men and the children of these communities how they ought to be without any breadth or context of the experiences of these people. And it just makes me sometimes wonder, what we are actually doing in terms of our educational systems. But that's another show.
You know what we're doing.
Yes, I do.
We're producing phony experts that will produce frustrating and phony results. And that's by design. And we can change that. And I can tell you, because I have a school. But even without, we can change that. But see, we can decide that you can go to whether you want to go to Howard or whether you want to go to Georgetown or wherever you want to go. Okay, here is what our community needs. You are judged an expert by your walk and the results you produce. I don't want to hear that you got a PhD more than I want to hear what you studied and what's the result of it and how do we apply it to our current situation to achieve our future goals. You see, we're so impressed by position. We're impressed by the others who are laud, give somebody praise and whatever, as opposed to saying, I want to know what you have done, what you are doing. I want to know how what you're proposing, what you have learned applies to our people to lift us from where we are, not where we ought to be. I don't want to hear about if we could, if this, we could, if that. We are all we have. Just like we're all we have, and it's quite enough if we decide we're going to re-educate ourselves. Now, I'll give you a quick point. I know you got to have folks listen. Nobody can teach in our school, regardless of what degree you have, unless you go through a retraining process that we call warriors, healers, and builders. Because just because you got a particular, and I'm a scholar. I love scholarship. I also know that through scholarship or through counseling or through mathematics or through anything, you can also teach white supremacy. You can teach domination, period. You can lay people low while you are pretending that you lift them, or while you're actually trying, because often we go and we just uncritically take in what we're taught, and therefore we think it will apply, and of course it doesn't. Let me stop so you can take your coffee or whatever, because you know what you've done is you've thrown a rabbit in the briar patch.
I see that.
I'm good.
I know you're good, and we're going to continue with some of the comments you've made. Particularly, I want to go back to the 3 points that you were beginning to talk about. That unfortunately, I interrupted that stream of conscious reflection. Okay, very good. And I'm clear too that you have paid a tremendous price and cost for the work that you've done, particularly reaching out to the diaspora and the African community and the African American community first and foremost. That in and of itself often puts you in a very difficult position. But let's go to our callers. I want to remind our callers this is our show to look at fatherhood and what it means to be a father in this day and time, and the challenges and the joys that our communities are facing. We're having a wonderful conversation. This is Higher Ground. I'm your host, Reverend Boyd, and we're on Interlight Radio. So let's go to this wonderful caller who's been waiting to be a part of our conversation. We're going to go to area code 713. Good afternoon. Your comment or question? Are you there, caller? Okay, it doesn't seem like she's there. So we'll continue. We have a few more. But Wekesa, let me just ask you, let's just go back to some of what you said. You were offering some prescriptions for how our communities could begin to instill real commitment to fathers and to the communities. And I want to just put a little bit of a challenge to you here.
Beautiful.
We are so inundated and so educated by so many different channels these days. Of course, our educational institutions, higher, secondary, all of those streams of scholarship, as you talked about. We compete with the media in terms of the influences that we see that in many ways psychologically determine our behavior, it seems like. And I guess, while you talk about what families should require of their families, particularly as it relates to, the men in the family, but also as it relates to those of us who've been privileged enough to go to school and come back, and you're putting a really high challenge on them to say, okay, so you got this big bad PhD or this degree from Harvard or this degree from Hampton University. You're now taking this to a different level. You're now suggesting that the family, the community, hold them accountable for the investment that either the family or the community has made in terms of their education. I just don't think that's that's going to fly. I think that kids today, our children today, they are so inundated with, I got to have it now. And now means their success. Now means the best job. Now means a six-figure income. It does not necessarily mean the kind of inner analysis and the commitment of owning their identity in a way that uplifts and rebuilds and recommits and brings us back into the balance from the African identity that we come from. I'm just not sure that we can do that.
Well, here's how we can. I hear you, and of course, you're right in the sense that we're inundated by many different pulls on our community, identity, who you are, and all of that, and they all though stem from one part. That is, they are available to us, and they have an influence because of one thing. We are taught and don't believe that we're good enough. You see, when I am, and this is where the family and the community, small families, large communities, larger, increasing, can begin to have a priority on having the children know and believe that we are inside of God's grace, that we are good, that we are our African selves, our rich, poor, wherever we are, that we don't need to compensate. Because you see, a person who needs, whether it's 52-inch rims or whether it's a 55,000 square foot house, all those excesses are attempts to compensate. Whenever there is no need to compensate, then our children either quickly learn that they have been deceived and return to the right path, or never get on it in the first place. And this is not something that I'm just saying as theoretical. This is something that I know both in my own families, my own personal history, my family, my children, for example, and others that I've taught. It is this society. Amos Wilson, I don't know if you know him. He's passed now, black psychologist, Amos N. Wilson. Mm-hmm. And he said something that's a cornerstone of our approach and our school, and that is we are alienated to serve aliens. Okay. Mm. All right. And so the process of socialization and education is one designed to alienate us from our community, from our culture, from ourselves. Now, once alienated from any of that, then I seek to compensate for that. And then you can then have me in my need to compensate, be an excessive consumer of anything and everything, trying to be somebody. And so our answer, and this is something, if you go flip back the pages of our history, you'll begin to notice when we had less than we have now, yet we were less distracted by those things, okay, that were outside of our community. There was a time when, while we knew of people outside of our community with various kinds of, whether money or degrees or whatever, the postman was the person that was looked up to. The deacon was a person that was looked up to and that we went to advice for. And that is, we didn't throw them under the bus because we were still connected. I was just listening to some Tupac, because I know I'm older. At the same time, I know I have some listeners who can relate. And he was talking about that he had thought about suicide, but whenever he grabbed a knife, all he could see is his mother's eyes. Okay. And this goes directly to my point. If we believe that we are enough, that we are loved, and that we're good enough, we're wonderful enough. That is, we're not defined by what we don't have. If I define myself by what I don't have, then you can bet I will be a volunteer captive to whatever is needed for me to be somebody. Whether that's 10 women, whether it's music videos where I'm making it rain, or whether I am head of a bank that is exploiting our own people through predatory lending. Okay, it knows no bounds, and it's really important because we typically will go to what looks like somebody on drugs or some obvious case of excess in terms of spending more than you can afford, etc. And we don't also include those who quote unquote made it, but they made it in service of other communities and at the expense of ours. That comes from us not believing that we're good enough. And our job, our first job, I don't care what we teach. Every subject that we teach in any school or any socialization must make us closer to our family. I want you to think about courses that you've had growing up. Okay, any course you can think of. Did your math, did your algebra course make you closer to your family or further away? Did your language arts course make you closer or further away? Did your science, chemistry course closer or further away? It made us further away because
Absolutely.
We're alienated to serve aliens. And that's why you see this behavior that is alien to the wishes and the best aspirations of our community. And if we make sure that our children know, now, in order to do this, we have to begin to heal our own wounds because more is caught than is taught.
Right. But I do want you to talk about, a process by which we can heal our own wounds, all right, and to begin to address this alienation of self that then allows us to feel so inadequate and so undeserving of the best that the Creator has for us. So I do want you to talk about that, but I want to take a break, and when we come back, we'll have that conversation, and I want to see how you instill these principles in your son on a kind of day-to-day level. What might that look like? This is Higher Ground. I'm your host, Carolyn Boyd. Stay tuned for our conversation on fatherhood. Welcome to Higher Ground with Reverend Carolyn Boyd, your destination for bold, provocative, smart talk radio. Higher Ground is moving to a new programming time slot every Wednesday, starting Wednesday, July 3rd at 8 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Central, and 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, bringing you alternative voices, views, and prescriptions with the very best experts, scholars, thought leaders, opinion shapers of our time. Mark your calendars and be sure to set a reminder alert. Higher Ground's new programming time slot every Wednesday starting July 3rd, 8 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, taking us to a higher ground. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. This is Higher Ground. I'm your host, Carolyn Boyd. We are discussing today fatherhood, the joys, the sorrows, the challenges facing our communities today as we peel back and really look at some of the causes that are resulting in much absenteeism from our communities in terms of fathers. And yet we are also so privileged to have a very thoughtful and insightful leader who can help guide us through this very, very challenging and sometimes crazy path we call fatherhood. And my guest today is Wekesa Madzimoyo, And I'm working with that name so I can say it as smoothly as he did. And so, Wekesa, thank you for being with us. And I just want to go back to what we were talking about, and we'll talk a little bit, and then I have a couple of tributes that we'd like to make, and we'll hear some of those tributes as we continue our conversation. So, let me go back to what we were talking about. I wanted to know how you went about instilling those wonderful principles of who you are in a most real and meaningful way, so that your sons and your daughters, particularly your sons, would know that who they are in a way that would allow them to remain strong, remain committed to that identity over time, and would allow them to give back and really make that connection to serving the community. How'd you do that?
Well, one of the things that comes to mind is a Sterling Brown poem that I would read to my sons every night. Okay? Strong men keep it coming on. Strong men getting stronger. They bought off some of your leaders. You follow the ways as blind men will. Then, and I don't have, it was a beautiful piece. I'll see if I can pull it up, where I would go, they change you, and gorge you, and you kept coming on. You kept coming on. It's a strong man, Sterling Brown. I would read it at night, when they get ready to go to bed. So a bedtime story, that was one of our bedtime stories. It was a poem by strong men. And my son, I was not surprised, but pleasantly affirmed that he was teaching that same to my grandsons. And so, Strong Men by Sterling Brown. They dragged you from the homeland. They changed you in coffles. They huddled you spoon-fashion in filthy hatches. They sold you to give a few gentlemen ease. They broke you in like oxen. They scourged you. They branded you. They made your women breeders. They swelled your numbers with bastards. They taught you the religion they disgraced. You sang, keep a inching along like a 4-inch worm. You sang, by and by, I'm gonna lay down this a heavy load. You sang, walk to get a chillin', don't you get weary. The strong men keep a coming on. The strong men get stronger. They point with pride to the roads you built for them. They ride in comfort over the rails you laid for them. They put hammers in your hand and said, drive so much before sundown. You sang, ain't no hammer in this land strikes like mine, baby, strikes like mine. They cooped you in their kitchens. They penned you in their factories. They gave you the jobs that they were too good for. They tried to guarantee happiness to themselves by shunting dirt and misery to you. You sang, me and my baby gon' shine, shine. Me and my baby gon' shine. The strong men keep a coming on. The strong men get stronger. They brought off some of your leaders. You stumbled as blind men will. They coaxed you, unwantedly soft-voiced. You followed away, then laughed as usual. They heard the laugh and wondered, unadmitting a deeper terror. The strong men keep a coming on, getting stronger. What from the slums where they have hemmed you? What from the teeny huts they could not keep from you? What reaches them, making them ill at ease, fearful? Today they shout prohibitions at you. Thou shalt not this, thou shalt not that, reserved for whites only. You laugh. One thing they cannot prohibit, the strong men coming on. Strong men getting stronger. Because when we're being aggressed upon, a statement that I am worthy of living means I challenge anyone who's aggressing upon me and snuffing my breath out. and you can take up any way you want to. If you don't like Ritalin being pushed in our children's veins in schools, then challenge that. If you don't like that Monsanto takes over the seeds and will determine what you can grow and not, challenge that. If you don't like the vendors being kicked off, if that's our primary way of making money, challenge that. The key is, who are the people, what are the policies, what are the practices that aggress upon our people and our aspirations, our best aspirations. Find them and begin to challenge them and grow in your capacity to challenge them. That is critical. As we do that, we also must heal, because we have been wounded by oppression over these many centuries. While we fight and heal, we still must build families. Now, it seems like it's a tall order. At the same time, it is that 1, 2, 3 psychological, sociological construct provides balance for us, okay, and allows us to handle the oppression regardless of how difficult it is. That is what our ancestors did during captivity. The goal was always to challenge oppression and to be free. We broke the manacles from our wrist during the Civil War. If it were not for African people fighting that, then the whole country would be the South. And
Wekesa, let me
would support it. All right.
I know you can go on, and we are definitely going to have you back. But I do want to hear from some of our callers who are calling in.
Okay.
Your insights and your breadth of contextualizing these issues is incredible. So we're going to listen to one of our callers. We're going to go to Diane Friday. Diane, your tribute or comment?
Well, I give thanks for the brothers who are out there trying to be fathers, but when we have all of this music that degrades women and our children pick up these tunes that are not accepted, then that's where we need to start focusing on our children and what they're hearing, and do not encourage them to say the words of these bad songs, because that is dumbing down our children. Instead, we should take our children's God-gifted talents and improve on their talents so that they can be more for the lack of words, more empowered.
Thank you, Diane. Diane, now where are you calling from?
North Carolina.
Oh, thank you so much. We appreciate. So you know this great man we're talking to already, huh?
Not exactly.
No. All right. All right. Well, we appreciate your comment and your perspective, and quite frankly, your challenge to us, because as you already said, sir, we are living in a very misogynistic world in terms of the images and the way we interact with women, and we have a lot of work to do in that regard. But unfortunately, we've got to wind up our show for today. It's been a great conversation. So I'm gonna see, Wekesa, if you can summarize in about a minute.
Sure.
Give us some closing thoughts. Tell us how we can reach you and be in touch with you. And I am telling the audience, we're going to have him back, and we're going to specifically talk about education. I believe you will be changed by his understanding of how we should teach and how we should support our children. So can you give us some closing thoughts and then tell us how to be in touch with you?
I can. The key for us is to heal alienation and to become authentic, become emotionally authentic, because we're told not to be and we're taught not to be. We also must become authentic in terms of our essence, to know that we are made in the image of God. We are God's children. We're made in God's grace. We got to begin to heal that, not just say those words. I will say one thing for brothers who are trying to find sisters and vice versa. Find a sister or a brother who can leave you. Make your relationships with people who can leave you, but you earn their respect every day. Show your children partnership, and in fact, you will then begin to give them insurance against all of the stuff that's coming out there. Now, here's how you can get in touch with me. I am Wekesa Madzimoyo, www.ayaed.com. Ayaed. Wekesa.com. Okay. And if you look up Wekesa, Wekesa, Madzimoyo, then I'm all over the internet. I'm easy to find. Telephone number 404-201-2356. One more time, 404-201-2356. What you hear, we have workshops, we have tapes and CDs, we have school for middle school and high school students and workshops for adults.
I'm so sorry, but I got to wrap up. This is Higher Ground, and I'm your host, Carolyn Boyd. Today we're having a wonderful conversation about fatherhood. Please be in touch with us. Be sure to mark your calendars. Next Thursday we'll have a wonderful conversation again for you. And remember, we are moving to a new time slot Wednesday starting July 3rd. So stay with us for more information coming up. We appreciate our wonderful guest today. And may I just say, for those of you who were not able to get your call in or your email, please forgive us and we'll do better the next time. But this is Higher Ground with your host, Carolyn Boyd. Stay tuned for conversations on the way.